I caught my fiancé on the phone 2 days before our wedding, laughing to someone in Italian. After 1 year with this American idiot, I'll divorce her, take half her money, and bring you to Miami, Bella Mia. I didn't cancel our $35,000 wedding. Instead, I smiled, walked down the aisle in my $7,000 Vera Wang dress, and handed him deportation papers instead of a marriage certificate. His face when the ICE agents walked in during our first dance? Priceless. When you spend 3 years of your life loving someone, planning a future together, picking out china patterns and arguing over whether your hypothetical kids would attend public or private school, you don't expect to find out it was all a lie. But that's exactly what happened to me last spring, and honestly, I'm still processing how I went from being a bride-to-be to orchestrating what my friends now call the most savage wedding day revenge they've ever witnessed. Let me rewind. I met Alessandro at a charity gala for the Miami Children's Hospital. He was catering the event, tall, dark-haired, with those soulful brown eyes and an Italian accent that made even "Can I take your empty glass" sound like poetry. I was there representing my law firm, which had sponsored a table. We locked eyes across the chocolate fountain, and by the end of the night, he had my number. Our romance was a whirlwind, intense, passionate, and sprinkled with enough red flags to decorate a Christmas tree, though I was too blinded by those dimples to notice at the time. Looking back, I should have questioned why a guy who claimed to be from a wealthy family in Milan was bartending in Miami, or why he never introduced me to a single family member despite being so close to his mama, or why, despite living in the US for 5 years, he still didn't have a green card and kept forgetting to renew his work visa. But when you're in love with the idea of being in love, you ignore these things. You make excuses. He's just independent, I told my skeptical best friend Jenna. His family doesn't travel well, I explained to my parents when they asked why his relatives weren't coming to the wedding. The immigration system is complicated. I justified to myself despite being an actual immigration attorney who should have known better. Updated. You guys, thank you for all the support on my last post. I've been reading your comments between lawyer appointments and stress baking 7 batches of stress brownies. To answer the most common question, yes, I did keep the engagement ring. I'm thinking of selling it to fund a dodged-a-bullet trip to Bali. Would you have gone through with the wedding like I did or just canceled everything? 3 years. 3 years of building a life with Alessandro. I helped him find a better job at an upscale restaurant downtown. I introduced him to my entire social circle. I added him to my Hulu account and didn't even complain when he created his own profile to watch those terrible Italian soap operas. Hell, I even learned to cook carbonara the way his nonna supposedly made it, which involved an absurd amount of pancetta and a strict prohibition against cream. That's why what happened next shattered me so completely. 2 days before our wedding, Alessandro's phone rang while he was in the shower. I noticed it was an Italian number, and thinking it might be one of his relatives finally calling about the wedding, I answered. "Pronto?" I said, using one of the 5 Italian words I'd learned. The woman on the other end paused, then asked in accented English, "Who is this?" "This is Sophie, Alessandro's fiancé." "Who's this?" Another pause, then laughter. "Fiancé? Oh, this is too good. I'm Valentina, Alessandro's girlfriend." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "That's not possible. We're getting married on Saturday." "Of course you are, Kara," she said, her voice dripping with pity. "Just like he married that Canadian girl in 2018 and that British woman before her. It's what he does." My knees gave out, and I sank to the floor, still clutching his phone. "What are you talking about? Has he told you yet about his sick mother who needs expensive surgery? Or was it his little sister's college tuition this time?" Valentina sighed. "Look, I know about his arrangements. He marries women for papers, stays long enough to get residency, takes what he can, then comes back to me. We've been together since high school." I wanted to hang up, to believe she was lying, but something in her tired voice rang true. "I don't understand. He's lived here for years. He has a visa." She laughed again, but it was hollow. "No, Kara, he was deported from Canada 2 years ago, and from the UK before that. His real name isn't even Alessandro." I heard the shower turn off and quickly told her I had to go. After hanging up, I went straight to my home office, hands shaking as I pulled up my laptop. As an immigration attorney, I had access to certain databases. What I found made me physically ill. Alessandro Ricci was actually Antonio Rossi, a man who'd been deported from both Canada and the UK for visa fraud. He had never been to culinary school in Milan. His family wasn't wealthy vineyard owners. Everything, every single thing he'd told me, was a lie. I spent the next hour vomiting in the bathroom, telling Alessandro I must have eaten something bad. Then I called my firm's senior partner from my car and explained the situation. Barbara didn't even hesitate. "Come to the office now, and don't let him know that you know." For the next 2 days, I lived a double life. I attended our rehearsal dinner, smiling as Alessandro charmed everyone with fabricated stories about his childhood. I laughed at his best man's toast about our future children having the best of both worlds, American ambition and Italian passion. I held his hand as we thanked everyone for coming to celebrate our love. And all the while, I was working with Barbara and 2 of her ice contacts to build an airtight case against the man I'd planned to spend my life with. The morning of the wedding was surreal. My mother helped me into my dress, tearing up as she fastened the buttons. "He's such a catch," she whispered, adjusting my veil. "You got lucky with this one." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. My 3 bridesmaids fluttered around me, taking photos for Instagram and gushing about how Alessandro wouldn't be able to breathe when he saw me. Jenna, my maid of honor, sensed something was wrong but mistook it for normal wedding jitters. "Every bride gets cold feet," she assured me, handing me a mimosa. "Just remember how he looks at you." Yes, I thought bitterly, like I'm his golden ticket to permanent residency. The ceremony was at the Vizcaya Museum and Gardens, this gorgeous Italian-inspired villa overlooking Biscayne Bay. Alessandro had pushed hard for this venue, claiming it reminded him of home. Now I understood why. It was as close as he'd get to Italy for a long time after I was done with him. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, 150 guests smiling at me, a string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon, and my heart hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Alessandro stood at the altar, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, tears in his eyes as he watched me approach. Oscar-worthy performance, I thought. The ceremony passed in a blur. We exchanged vows, mine carefully rewritten to remove any promises I couldn't keep, his full of lies about eternal love and devotion. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to our union, I almost laughed. If they only knew. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant finally said. "You may kiss." The bride, Alessandro, pulled me close, whispering "Ti amo" before kissing me. I let myself enjoy it for a half-second, a goodbye to the man I thought I knew, before pulling away with a practiced smile. Here's where most stories would end. But mine was just getting to the good part. During the cocktail hour, while guests mingled in the gardens, I led Alessandro to a private room where Barbara was waiting with what appeared to be our marriage license. "We just need your signatures," she said with a professional smile. Alessandro beamed, taking the pen eagerly. It wasn't until after he'd signed that Barbara slid the paper over to me. Instead of signing, I pushed across a different document. One that detailed his history of immigration fraud and included copies of his previous deportations. "What is this?" he asked, confusion clouding his features. "This," I said calmly, "is your deportation notice. You're being charged with attempted marriage fraud." The color drained from his face. "Sophie, what are you talking about? This is crazy." "Is it, Antonio?" I watched his eyes widen at the use of his real name. "That's right. I know everything. About Valentina, about Canada, about the UK. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I'm an immigration attorney, for God's sake." He switched tactics, grabbing my hands, his eyes filling with tears. "Baby, listen, I can explain. Yes, I wasn't honest about everything, but what we have is real. I love you." I pulled my hands away. "Save it for the immigration judge. I have a reception to get to." As I moved toward the door, he lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "You can't do this. Do you know how much money I've invested in this relationship? 3 years. 3 fucking years of listening to your boring stories and pretending to care about your stupid job." And there it was, the real Alessandro, mask finally slipping. A vicious smile spread across his face. "You think you've won? Even if they deport me, you've still wasted 3 years of your life on me. No one will want you now, 30-year-old lawyer with trust issues. I've ruined you." I leaned in close, keeping my voice steady despite the rage and hurt churning inside me. "You underestimated me once, don't make that mistake again." On cue, the door opened and 2 ICE agents walked in. They'd been posing as waitstaff, waiting for my signal. "Antonio Rossi," one said formally, "you're being detained pending deportation proceedings for violation of immigration law." The look on Alessandro's face as they handcuffed him was worth every penny of the non-refundable wedding deposits. "You bitch," he hissed as they led him away. "This isn't over." I straightened my veil and took a deep breath. Actually, it is. Updated. Holy crap, this blew up overnight. My inbox is flooded. For those asking about the reception, yes, I still had it. Called it my freedom party and told everyone there'd been a change of plans. Most were shocked, but Jenna threw her bouquet in the air and shouted, "That Italian snake can rot in hell." So many of you have shared similar stories. Thank you for making me feel less alone. Question. I'm thinking of writing a book about spotting immigration scammers. Would you read it? Walking back into the reception alone was one of the hardest things I've ever done. 150 pairs of eyes turned to me expectantly, then shifted to the door, waiting for Alessandro to follow. The band faltered mid-song. My mother half rose from her seat, confusion etched on her face. I tapped a knife against my champagne glass, the crystal chime cutting through the murmurs. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "I have an announcement to make." Over the next 5 minutes, I gave the abbreviated version of what had happened. No salacious details, just the bare facts. Alessandro had been planning to defraud me, I'd discovered his plot, and he'd just been detained by immigration authorities. The reception would continue, I explained, but more as a celebration of dodging a bullet than a marriage. There was stunned silence, then a cacophony of gasps, questions, and exclamations. My mother burst into tears. My father looked like he wanted to punch something. Jenna immediately took charge, ordering the band to play and the servers to start bringing out food. "You're still having the reception?" someone asked incredulously. I gestured around at the flowers, the cake, the open bar. "Everything's paid for. And frankly, I could use a drink." That broke the tension. Someone laughed, then someone else, and suddenly people were approaching me with hugs, support, and, once the initial shock wore off, admiration. "That's the most badass thing I've ever heard," my colleague Matt told me, handing me a glass of scotch. "Remind me never to cross you in court." The next few hours passed in a surreal blur. I danced with my father to the song we'd rehearsed. I cut the cake alone, to raucous cheers. I threw my bouquet. Jenna caught it, then immediately play-acted being crushed by its weight, making everyone laugh. It wasn't the wedding reception I'd planned, but it was oddly cathartic. By the end of the night, I was exhausted but standing taller. As the last guest trickled out, Jenna found me sitting alone by the fountain, shoes off, veil discarded. "You know," she said, settling beside me, "most women just call off the wedding when they find out their fiancé's a con man. Leave. It to you to turn it into a sting operation?" I laughed weakly. "Go big or go home, right?" "For what it's worth," she added, bumping my shoulder with hers. "I'm proud of you. And a little scared, but mostly proud." The aftermath was messy. I had to explain to distant relatives why they wouldn't be receiving thank you notes for the fancy china they'd gifted us. I returned what presents I could and donated the rest to a domestic violence shelter. I moved out of our shared apartment, not because I had to. It was in my name, but because everything there reminded me of him. Alessandro's deportation process moved quickly. Barbara pulled some strings, and within 3 weeks he was on a plane back to Italy. I received one letter from him, filled with alternating apologies and threats, which I promptly turned over to the authorities. Valentina contacted me again, this time to thank me. Apparently Alessandro had scammed her too, borrowing money he never intended to repay. We've kept in sporadic touch. There's something uniquely bonding about having been deceived by the same person. The professional fallout was unexpected. Once word got out about what happened, and in Miami's legal community, word travels fast, I became something of a minor celebrity. Barbara promoted me to head our firm's new division focusing on marriage fraud cases. I've been asked to speak at conferences about identifying immigration scams. 3 months ago, I even consulted on a Law & Order, SVU episode loosely based on my experience, which was surreal to watch. It's been 8 months since what I now refer to as the non-wedding. I'd love to say I'm completely healed, but that would be a lie. I still have moments where I question everything. How I could have been so blind. Whether there were signs I missed. If any part of what we had was real. I've had exactly 2 dates since then, both disasters because I spent the entire time looking for inconsistencies in their stories about where they grew up or what they did for a living. But I'm getting there. I started therapy, which has been helping. I adopted a rescue pit bull named Justice who takes up Alessandro's side of the bed and doesn't leave dirty dishes in the sink. I've even helped 4 other women identify potential marriage fraud situations before they made it to the altar. Last week, I received a notification that Alessandro was attempting to enter Canada using a false identity. Thanks to the alert I'd placed in the system, he was detained at the border. From what I hear, the Canadians are even less amused by repeat offenders than we are. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust someone again, at least not in the naive way I trusted him. But I'm learning that there's strength in skepticism, power, in verification, and nothing wrong with protecting your own heart while opening it to others. If Alessandro taught me anything, beyond an extensive Italian vocabulary of curse words, it's that love shouldn't make you stupid. It should make you smarter, stronger, more yourself. Real love doesn't ask you to ignore red flags. It eliminates them. And anyone who makes you feel like you need to constantly prove your worth isn't worth your time. So here I am, starting over, at 30. Single, slightly traumatized, but standing. And honestly, I'd rather be alone than spend another minute with someone who only saw me as a passport with a pulse. Updated. I didn't expect this post to resonate with so many people. For those asking about Alessandro, apparently he's back with Valentina. In Italy. Her problem now. The most satisfying part? ICE added him to a watch list, so he can never enter the US or Canada again. I'm healing, slowly but surely. My therapy homework this week is to go on a date without running a background check. First, wish me luck. Final question for all of you. If you could say one thing to the person who broke your heart, what would it be?